going to begin this evening by doing the recollection of the Buddha. So, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghaṃ Namasāmi. This evening I've chosen to give a talk on a very profound and very deep discourse that the Buddha gave. And I find this a very challenging discourse. And this evening, maybe some of the things that I may say you may find challenging. So please listen with an inquiring mind, an open mind. And the reason I've chosen this particular discourse is that it does begin with a set of 10 questions, and these particular questions are profound philosophical questions that we often ask in life, and they're also very profound religious questions. A part of the religious search is seeking answers to questions, the question about existence, the question about life, where we've come from, where we're going, what's the purpose, who am I? These sort of questions. Excuse me. And this particular discourse is from the numerical discourses. It's the Anguttara Nikaya, and it's in the group of 10s. So there's 10 questions. And the 10 questions, I'll read the discourse first. It's a very short and brief one. And then I'll give a commentary on that. And this begins, it's called The Roots of Everything. And the Buddha's talking to the monks, and he says, "It may be, O monks, that wandering ascetics, or wandering teachers, or religious teachers of other traditions and persuasions might ask you, what are all things? In what are all things rooted? How do they come to actual existence? Where do they arise? Where do they converge? What is the foremost of all things? What is their master? What is the highest of all things? What is the essence of all things? Where do all things merge? And where do they end?" And I will maybe go through some of these questions first before giving the response, the reply. Because the first question, in what are all things rooted? I mean, where do things come from? Firstly, when in the Buddha is talking about all things, what do we mean by all things? And in Buddhism it has a very specific meaning. It's basically all experience, everything that we can know, everything that is comprehended, everything that we can understand. So, what is this all? What can we understand? What is the means of experiencing the world? And the Buddha actually defined the means of experiencing the world as this body and mind. These are the ways, the mechanisms, the doorways for perceiving and realizing and understanding and having contact with the world, isn't it? This body and mind, having the 5 sense doors of the body, the sight, sound, smell, taste and touch, and then the conceptual ability of the mind to understand and be conscious and aware of these things. So it is the body and mind that has contact with the world. So in Buddhism we call this the 5 aggregates of being, because the Buddha defined existence up into 5 things. That is the physical body, then the ability to experience feeling, both physical feeling of both pleasure, neutral feeling and pain, and also emotional, mental feeling, feelings of happiness or even equanimity, and then sadness and sorrow. Those are feelings that we experience and know the world by. So that's one way of knowing the world, knowing everything, knowing all our experience. We judge the world and existence and life through our physical body and health and our physical feelings and psychological feelings and emotions. The other way of knowing the world is through the doors of perception, the way we perceive and memorize and know. This is a color blue. We've been taught and conditioned to conceptualize the world. This is a sound of a certain voice or an animal or a bird. We've perceived the world through the doors of perception and memorized those perceptions through our language. And in this way we can conceptualize about the world. So that leads to the other door of perception, thinking, the ability to, once having felt and perceived, to think about and conceptualize, to intellectualize and rationalize. This is the other realm of the mind, to know. We know the world by analysis, by thinking and understanding. And then the other way to know the world is through just conscious awareness, to know. When something arises through the eye, we know that this is light, this is color. We can know feeling, we can know thought, we can know a mood, we can know an idea. We can know all the other aspects of our sense door experience. And so it's through the body and these 5 aspects of the mind that we know everything in the world. And that's actually interesting, because the Buddha was not interested in about intellectual ideas of everything that cannot be known. There are some religious traditions or other ascetic traditions or philosophical traditions that may speak of the unknowable, the incomprehensible, the mystical. The Buddha was not really interested in something that cannot be known. If it cannot be known, is it of benefit? If it is so mystical that it is a mystery and cannot be understood by human consciousness, human intelligence, human wisdom, human experience, then is it of benefit to humanity? That was the question he asked. And he was very pragmatic. He was saying that he's only interested in those things that can be comprehended by a human being through their knowledge, through their intellect, through their wisdom, through their experience. If it cannot be known, it's beyond your comprehension, then it's out of the realms of possibilities to know, and therefore is of little use to the problematic nature of human existence. It's like if you're sick and you go to a doctor and he says, yes, you can get better from that illness, And you say, oh, how? He says, well, there is a medicine. And you say, well, what's that medicine? And you say, it's a mystery. It's unknowable. It's unattainable. It's incomprehensible, that medicine. Then is it of benefit to that ill person? So the Buddha was very pragmatic in this approach to the philosophical ideas of the world. He's not saying that you cannot intellectualize in that way. He's saying that what he's concerned with is what can be known and experienced by the human mind, what can be experienced here and now. So this is what we're talking about, the all. So in what are all things rooted? That is, where do they all come from? That was the first question that he asked, and we often ask, isn't it? Where do I come from? Where have I been created from? That's a profound question. Then he goes on to talk about, if you're asked, how do things come into actual existence? Is it a creator God? Is it from some divine essence? Is it just pure energy? Is it just chemicals? Is it the grand primordial cosmic liquid that reaches a certain temperature and human beings suddenly appear in the forms of cells and evolve, and then humanity comes into existence? How do things come into existence? Where do they arise? Where do they converge? Where do things go to? Where do things? What is their point of meeting, a point of unity? What is the foremost of all things? What's the highest? What's the most important thing in existence? What is their master? Is their master some deva or some divine being outside of yourself? Is that the Lord? Is that the divine? Is that the highest? Is that the controller? What is the highest of all things? What's the supreme of all existence? And what is the essence? What's the underlying substance to all things? What's the most important, unique, single quality of all things? And where do all things merge? And where do they end? Where do things go to? Where does life go to? Where does existence end? So these are very significant questions, and no doubt you've asked yourself these very questions. And it's very interesting. I'll give you the response and then go on to speak about this. The Buddha's response was, if monks, you are asked by members of other religious traditions or wandering ascetics of other persuasions these 10 questions, monks, you should reply as follows. This is the Buddha's response to these 10 questions. All things are rooted in desire. They come to actual existence through attention of the mind. They originate from contact. They converge on feelings. The foremost of all things is concentration. All things are mastered by mindfulness. Their peak is wisdom. The essence of all things is liberation. All things merge in the deathless, and Nibbana, enlightenment, is their culmination. So that is the response that the Buddha recommended that to the monks, that if you're ever asked any of these 10 questions, what's the essence of all things? The essence is liberation. Where do all things merge? The deathless. And this response is actually very interesting because nowhere does the Buddha talk about something outside yourself, outside what you can experience. He's not saying that the master of all things is some divine being or some creator, or the answer to these questions are in some religious book. You notice that all these things can be psychologically known. They can be known in your own mind, through your own experience, through your own wisdom, through your own understanding. So that's actually one significant event. The Buddhist, one unique aspect of the Buddhist path is to turn inward, not to go outward. Often you find that philosophical traditions or religious traditions will tend to externalize understanding, tend to externalize experience, try to seek answers outside of oneself. And so we find that science tends to do that. A spiritual path which is seeking truth, seeking an understanding of all things, needs to turn in to one's own experience and turn into the mind, turn in on itself.